Ukraine wakes after a night of explosions. This is the capital city, Kyiv. People are on high alert. Tension is high, but it's eerily quiet. Then, recognise the whole of Luhansk and Donetsk, which represents a much bigger land grab. We've just heard a siren go off for the first time. We haven't heard that before. So this is a very worrying morning for people in the capital city and beyond. This is what the fear had been all along. After weeks of uncertainty, Russia's President Vladimir Putin addressed the nation around 6 a.m. Moscow time.
We will strive for the demilitarization and denazification of Ukraine. Russia cannot feel safe, develop and exist with a constant threat emanating from the territory of modern Ukraine.
Vladimir Putin declares war on Ukraine. Over the next 20 minutes, we'll look back at a week that changed history, with BBC journalists on the ground across Ukraine and Russia. Ola Girin was in Ukraine's capital as it came under siege.
A day has changed everything for Ukraine and for security in Europe. Ukrainians were not safe in their own homes. Here, the aftermath of a strike on a block of flats in Kharkiv, Ukraine's second city. Missile fragments now on display in the playground. Like many here, Natalia is trying to comprehend what has befallen Ukraine, trying to work out how to protect her 2-year-old Karina.
We're shocked. We're totally shocked. We are afraid for our children, for our families.
As Russian attacks grow in intensity, Western leaders impose sanctions and condemn the violence.
Putin is the aggressor. Putin chose this war, and now he and his country will bear the consequences.
It's vital for the safety of every nation that Putin's squalid venture should ultimately fail and be seen to fail.
The UN Security Council held a surreal emergency session to discuss the actions of one of its own.
Don't ask me questions when you are speaking.
The current council president, a Russian, as the Secretary General called for peace.
President Putin, stop your troops from attacking the Ukraine. Give peace a chance. Too many people have already died.
While leaders discussed, armed convoys rolled across Ukraine. Sirens quickly became the norm for many here.
In this year, 2022, the most advanced of intelligence, the worst of warnings, the most intensive of diplomacy couldn't make President Putin blink. International norms are being shattered. The architecture of all our lives, and a siren to remind you that war has come to Kiev, in a European capital, in a city that is going right round the world.
In Moscow, hundreds took to the streets. No to war, they chanted, determined to make their voices heard, but they were silenced. Many were arrested. Overnight brought no respite. More attacks before dawn, as Ukrainian anti-aircraft batteries intercept a missile over the capital. As the assault closes in on Kyiv, 2.5 million civilians are suddenly on the front line. Russia says it's not targeting civilians, but this is what happens when you fire missiles at a capital city. Paul Adams walked among the empty streets of Kyiv.
In 24 hours, these streets have almost completely emptied. It is increasingly dangerous to go out. The Ukrainians have warned that Russian soldiers could be operating inside the city, perhaps even in stolen Ukrainian vehicles. Pressure on the government is mounting all the time. Most people here believe the Russians simply want to get rid of it. For Ukraine's president, speaking again to his people, this is a lonely fight.
This morning we are alone in defending our country. Just like yesterday, the most powerful forces in the world watch from afar. Have yesterday's sanctions persuaded Russia? We see in our skies and feel on the ground that they are not enough.
Many residents have taken cover underground.
Now we have come to the building where the bomb shelter is, and we're trying to stay here. It's pretty crowded. People get their dogs and cats and kids, and we're hearing the news about possible attacks in this district.
Attacks are spreading across the country. In Mariupol in the southeast, destruction. In Sumy in the northeast, battles rage. Here in the capital, horror, as a tank drives over a car. Incredibly, the driver survived. The outbreak of war means the once unthinkable is suddenly normal. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky sends a rallying cry as everyday Ukrainians take to the battle line.
We are all here, our soldiers are here, the citizens are here, and we are here. We defend our independence. That's how it will go. Glory to our defenders, both male and female. Glory to Ukraine.
But many also try to flee. Thousands flood train stations like this one in Kiev. A warning shot sounds out as people desperately try to escape the conflict via any means possible. Be it by car, foot, or by train, people head for the borders. Fergal Keane was in Lviv. Here people run for the train station as the sirens ring out. They look for shelter and for a means of escape. Platforms overflowing with people wanting to get out.
This is hard to credit, to believe in the Europe of 2022. People are just crushing all around me, trying to get onto these trains. A woman, a young mother with a baby, they're screaming because everyone's getting crushed.
Their hope is that the train would help them avoid this, the line of cars to the Polish border.
So those people are moving on foot down towards the border with Poland, but it's another 20 kilometers from where we are at the moment. We just need to move out of the way and let more people pass us here. They're coming. And constant procession of people.
However they arrive at the border, this slow shuffle out of the lives they knew is what awaits.
Despite Russia's military might, Ukraine holds firm.
But the worry from Western officials is this: if President Putin of Russia doesn't get the quick victory that many predicted and the one he wants, then the worry is that he might resort to more drastic measures to achieve his goal. To quote one official, he said for him, this is no longer a war of choice, but of necessity.
This is what Kyiv awoke to. All of this disruption. In a residential area, authorities say it was a Russian missile strike which killed 2 people. The streets of Kyiv are empty. A city braced for impact. Volodymyr Zelensky appears on the city's deserted streets, reassuring the nation. I am here, he says, and we will not lay down our arms. Far from it. We found Ukrainians taking up arms, forming volunteer brigades to defend the city alongside local police. This volunteer, who goes by the nickname Malloy, says, I don't want to live in Russia, and my brothers in arms don't want that either. We will defend this city, or I will die. Across the country, groups form to make homemade petrol bombs. Many unite in the face of continuing Russian advance, keen to defend their homeland.
It's just too dangerous above ground. We've all had to come down, the BBC team here, to shelter underground. It's been clear throughout the day that the increasing level of military ordnance going off quite a few miles away, but getting closer and closer to our position here. It's simply too dangerous to be above ground, and I think what needs to be remembered is this is the experience now for millions of people across this country. Let's get into that a little bit more with our chief international correspondent, Lise Doucet. This is a city, Kiev, capital city, just under 3 million people, well over 40 million people across this country. This is their experience of this war.
Ukraine is now a subterranean world. Life is lived for millions of people across this country in basements like this, in car parks, in bomb shelters, wherever they can find shelter. The metro station has stopped working in Kiev because it's now a 24-hour refuge. And a curfew is in force. Not just a night curfew, Clive, but a curfew which will last until 8 a.m. on Monday. That was the first warning we had today that something was about to happen. And in the last hour, there's been electricity in the air. The air raid sirens have sounded. There's been explosions, rattle of gunfire, and an urgency to the warnings. Take to the shelters. This comes after an order from Moscow to its forces to advance in all directions against Kiev.
There is no let-up in fighting. On the streets of Kharkiv, a grim warning of what is to come if the conflict doesn't stop. Russian troops roll in, but the Ukrainian defense forces fight on. Putin takes his next move. The world stops.
War in Ukraine, and now Russia's nuclear forces on special alert. Russian state TV announced our submarines alone are capable of launching more than 500 nuclear warheads, guaranteed to destroy America and all of NATO. So what is this? Brinkmanship? Something more? Or something less? Empty threats? But I think after the dramatic events we've seen in recent days, it would be unwise to dismiss these signals. From the Kremlin, a pointed message to the West. Don't push Russia. President Putin summoned his military chiefs and gave them an order.
Top officials of leading NATO countries are making aggressive statements about our country. Therefore, I'm ordering the Minister of Defense and the Chief of the General Staff to put the strategic nuclear forces on special alert.
Would Putin really use them? He practiced a week ago, overseeing exercises of Russia's strategic deterrence forces. Typically unsubtle hints to America and NATO not to stand in his way over Ukraine.
This is now an age of wartime leaders. A former Ukrainian Prime Minister posts an online tutorial on how to make petrol bombs. They only create small explosions. Across Ukraine, military powers are creating much bigger impacts. Nick Beake looked on from the capital, Kiev.
We're hearing the explosions get louder as the Russians draw ever nearer. Seizing this European capital while the world looks on is for now President Putin's prime objective. And everyone living here simply has no idea just how much force he's prepared to use to do that and just how many people could die.
Children in the capital play in an underground world mirroring the gruesome reality of what's unfolding above them.
Overnight, a now upsettingly familiar crackle of gunfire for many in Ukraine. The reality of life in a country at war, sounding throughout the night.
This is the quietest we've seen the centre of Kiev, and this is being replicated in cities across the country. Ukraine's defence has been both surprising and extraordinary, but it is still the underdog, and Russia is still making gains.
At Okhmedet Hospital, the largest paediatric centre in Ukraine, staff are used to battling disease. Now they have to adjust to war. Doctors say they have enough supplies, but the World Health Organization warns if the situation gets worse, oxygen supplies could run out. Outside, ill children wait, with their worried mothers to be transferred to Poland for cancer treatment no longer available here. Artyom is facing a risky journey with his mother.
I'll be frank, I'm scared, but I can see another way to escape, so we have to do this.
Every day sirens sound and Ukrainians run underground or for shelter. Car parks, basements and bunkers become home to millions across the country. Sarah Rainsford saw firsthand the reality of conditions people face.
This bomb shelter, this bunker, was built beneath a factory in the Soviet Union. It was supposed to be used in the event of a nuclear attack, and now it's being used in modern-day Ukraine to keep people safe when the sirens wail again.
There has been no attack on Dnipro yet, but suddenly the danger feels close. Alina and Yuri spent last night here. She says it's scary. He tells me he was shaking the first time.
We don't understand why Russia is attacking us. They say they want to protect us. But from what? We're just hiding now. We didn't need their protection.
People in areas like this are now spending their nights in bomb shelters. The fighting hasn't come here yet, but people are extremely worried already.
Back in Kiev, the air raid sirens are wailing again. There have been reports about foreign students not being allowed on trains.
In these hard times, I just hope it doesn't matter who's Indian, who's Pakistani, Russian, Ukrainian. We all are just people, we have certain human rights. So I guess in these hard times, we should just help each other and cooperativeness, and that's all.
Already there are queues for food, some wondering how long it will be until supplies start to run out. Day 5 of the invasion and Ukraine still resists. But there are fears Kiev could be put under siege. One more Russian missile strike brings terror to the streets of Kiev. The target, Kiev's TV tower. Emergency services say 5 people were killed. And more firepower is closing in, more uncertainty for a city already under intense strain. Aerial photography reveals a convoy around 40 miles long, headed for the capital.
Whether people have been taking shelter below ground or taking up weapons above it, they will have all seen the pictures from other locations in this vast country of what is happening.
Volunteers from all walks of life continue to come forward to defend their country, not entirely sure of what they're signing up for. Igor, a lawyer, now mans a lookout post.
Yeah, so a week ago I was representing my cases in a courtroom, and now it's difficult to grasp, but if you don't think about it and simply do what you have to do, it actually feels pretty already normal.
I mean, have you ever held a gun in your hands before?
At school we've trained to deal with these sort of things, but I have never dealt with it and never even shot a gun or a pistol.
The new architecture of Kiev, tank traps and barricades made from whatever is at hand, a city watching on as Ukraine's second city, Kharkiv, comes under fire. A strike right at the heart of the city. Russia says it's not targeting civilians here. It says it's using precision missiles. It claims it's liberating Ukraine from Nazis, but Russia has invaded its neighbour and it is killing civilians. Ukraine's president calls it the price for freedom. It's tangible just how enormous that price is.
We are fighting just for our land and for our freedom.
This show of solidarity from the European Parliament, a standing ovation. Then the president was off to lead the defence of his country.
Below ground in our bomb shelter, the adrenaline has run out. People are visibly tired, visibly upset from everything that's going on. And when you come up, It's this, empty. And you can feel the tension. Moscow has urged people living here to leave as it lists new targets, but for so many people, that's not an option.
In broad daylight, danger just outside the window. This is the town of Borodyanka, about 25 miles from Kiev. As Russians advance towards the city, they leave a trail of destruction.
They know nothing about our capital, about our history, but they have an order to erase our history, to erase our country, to erase us all.
West of Kiev, in the town of Zhytomyr, the target may have been an airbase nearby, but family homes have been destroyed. Oleg Rivak stands calmly in the rubble, but he has lost his wife. She was the light of my life, he says. She was the best thing that's happened to me, but I'm trying to keep myself together because of one reason. I still have parents and a daughter.
They're telling people to stay inside. Shooting in the air, you hear the sounds.
A glimpse of street-to-street fighting in Kherson on the Black Sea. Russia appears to have captured the port city. In the capital, 7 days on from the start of war, sirens wail. They echo the fear and dread many in Kiev feel. People wait, nervous for the future. A week that has changed the world forever. Nothing is certain in the days, weeks, or months ahead. The people of Ukraine wait as the world watches on.